My name is Dana Mercer. I'm 29, and I run payroll for a food distribution center in Columbus, which means I spend my days catching numbers when stories stop matching. By the time Easter dinner reached the breadbasket, my mother, Paula Mercer, had lined the room with compliments for Kelsey, and every one of them pointed away from me. I pulled my plate closer, felt paper-scraped porcelain, and found a folded note tucked beneath it. Irene's neat handwriting pressed into the crease like a warning before dinner started. It read, "Don't give her another dollar. Ask about the gift letter. Ask why Kelsey's mortgage statement comes here." And before I looked up, Paula was already standing with wine raised. She lifted her glass and smiled that polished family smile while announcing Kelsey had finally bought a townhouse, the kind of home that proves a woman knows what she's doing. I didn't interrupt, because the note was still under my palm and the room was still admiring my sister, and I knew dinner had already stopped belonging to my mother. Paula kept her glass raised and turned toward me with that warm, downward smile. "And Dana, when exactly are you planning to settle down?" The room waited, and Kelsey leaned back beside Wyatt, smiling into her wine. "You can't live behind a screen forever and call that living." Then Paula added, "Your sister has a home, a husband, and an actual plan." And that little word actual landed harder than the glassware. I left Irene's note under my fingers and looked at Kelsey instead of my mother. Interesting, because stable usually means honest to me. Kelsey laughed like I had missed the obvious point and tipped her chin toward the dining room. "Some of us actually build futures." "Dana." Paula looked pleased that everyone was still watching me and pressed further. "You save and save. But for what? If nothing ever changes?" I could feel Wyatt glance up, then back down, while an aunt kept cutting ham and nobody touched the basket where Irene's note waited. So I gave them the smallest truth first. "I'm not waiting to get settled. I already handled that without an audience present." Nobody laughed after that. Not even Kelsey. And Paula's smile held 1 second too long, like she had stepped onto something unstable. 6 weeks earlier, I was still at my kitchen table finishing payroll when Paula called with the same opening she always used. One tired breath and then a number. The pipe behind the kitchen wall burst. "Dana." And the plumber says, $4,600 before the weekend, or I'll have water damage everywhere. I closed my laptop halfway, stared at the timestamp on my screen, and asked the only question I ever asked anymore. "Do you need it tonight?" Paula moved straight past gratitude and into urgency, which told me everything about the role I was expected to play before the transfer even cleared. "I need it now. Not Monday. And I wouldn't ask if it weren't serious." I opened my banking app, sent $4,600 to her account, watched the confirmation line appear, and heard her soften just enough to say, "You're a good daughter when it counts." After the call, I pulled up the spreadsheet I kept under a folder labeled Family and added one more row beneath Breakwork: car insurance, rent help, and repairs. Date, amount, reason, account. All of it clean and quiet on the screen, while my apartment stayed silent around me. I saved the file, shut the computer, and told myself this was the last emergency I was ever going to cover. 2 days after I sent Paula $4,600, Kelsey posted a photo outside a gray townhouse with a clean porch, a fresh wreath, and the caption, "Grateful beyond words." My mother commented first, all hearts and pride. And by the time I reached the bottom, I had seen cousins celebrate a closing nobody mentioned me in. I read it 3 times, then opened the listing, because my transfer confirmation was still sitting in my email, and gratitude that clean usually hides something very dirty. The property history showed pending status that same weekend. Paula needed emergency plumbing money, so I took a screenshot and enlarged every single tiny date on the page. Then I called the plumber whose number Paula had used on me, and after a pause, long enough to matter. He gave me one short, clean sentence. Ma'am, I haven't been back to that house since early fall. And just like that, the pipe burst stopped, sounding like an emergency at all. I sat at my kitchen table with the screenshot open beside my bank receipt, looking at two timelines that should never have fit together in real life. I didn't call Paula back, didn't message Kelsey, and didn't argue with the evidence. Because once dates line up that neatly, somebody already made the choice for me. At the grocery store near Paula's neighborhood, Denise Pruitt spotted me by the canned soup and smiled like we were sharing good news instead of walking toward it. She asked whether Kelsey was loving the townhouse. Then, I figured you were part of all that paperwork too, with the easy confidence of someone already inside the story. I kept my cart still and asked, "What paperwork?" Because her wording landed exactly where my screenshot and transfer receipt had already left room there. Denise blinked once, then lowered her voice. Paula had brought in a gift letter already so the lender could document family funds for closing paperwork properly. I asked, "A gift from who?" And Denise hesitated just long enough to confirm the rest before admitting she thought everyone knew where the money came from. Then she tried to fix it by mentioning an automatic mortgage payment that had bounced once last month, and a statement that briefly rerouted to Paula's mailbox. I paid for groceries I barely remembered choosing, walked outside after that, and drove straight to Irene's alteration shop with Denise's words still intact. I laid out the gift letter, the bounced payment, and the redirected statement, and Irene listened without surprise, which told me this had never been one lie. She folded a receipt on the counter and, "So this time they didn't just take your money, Dana. They used it to make Kelsey seem completely believable." That night, I went home, opened every account my family never knew existed, and realized the cleanest answer was not another argument, but a front door with only my key. I had enough for a small condo on Columbus's east side because I lived plainly, kept the old car, skipped vacations, and never spent money soothing other people at all. I toured 2 units, rejected one building for deferred maintenance, chose the quieter place with a small balcony, and called Irene, who asked, "When do you close on it exactly?" The title office smelled like paper and copier heat, and I signed every page myself while the notary watched the funds clear and the room stayed quiet around me completely. When the keys touched my palm, Irene looked at me instead of the paperwork and gave me the only sentence that mattered. "This one is yours now and always will." I drove back without posting anything, set the keys inside my purse, and kept that new address quiet, because peace felt stronger when nobody expected access from me ever again. 3 days before Easter, Paula called with assignments instead of an invitation and went straight to logistics. "Come by at 4. Set the table. Warm everything. Handle the glasses." Then came the familiar split. "Kelsey is bringing the centerpiece and the main dish, so you can take care of the rest." As if the rest had always belonged to me. I looked at my new keys on the counter and answered, "I'll be there at dinner time. Same as everyone else." Paula sharpened immediately. "Don't start acting difficult over one holiday." And when that failed, she reached for the old weapon. "Your father would hate this version of you." I let the silence sit between us long enough to hear my own breathing before giving her the one line I had owed myself for years. "Don't use my father like an overdue bill every time you need labor, guilt, or money." And after that, Paula had nothing left but quiet. I slid Irene's note beside my water glass and looked at Paula before the room could settle back into polite chewing. "You want to talk about maturity, Mom? Then let's talk about the gift letter first." The forks paused before the words even finished landing, and Paula's expression changed the way glass changes when heat reaches it too fast. Clear 1 second, strained the next. Kelsey straightened in her chair. Wyatt finally looked up, and Paula tried to laugh without quite managing it. "I have no idea what you think you're doing, Dana, but this isn't the place. I kept my voice level and put the number on the table because numbers had carried this family longer than honesty ever had. You called me for $4,600 over a broken pipe, and that money landed in Kelsey's closing file instead of your kitchen wall. Kelsey leaned forward so fast her napkin slipped into her lap, and the sweetness disappeared from her face completely. Families help each other. Dana. Unless you've started keeping score like that now, I looked at her. Not Paula. Because this part belonged to both of them, and pretending a US had already cost me enough money. Then tell everyone why your caption thanked Mom. Why nobody mentioned my transfer. And why the lender needed a gift letter to make your financing work. Paula reached for the old script. Hands open. Voice soft. Trying to turn my facts into an attitude problem. I sacrificed for both my daughters. And I won't let bitterness ruin this dinner. Before I could answer, Denise shifted in her chair and stepped directly into the silence with the ruinously helpful tone people use right before disaster. I really thought everyone knew, especially after that automatic mortgage payment bounced and the statement temporarily rerouted back to Paula's address. No one moved after that, not even the cousins who had been talking over each other 10 seconds earlier. Wyatt turned toward Kelsey with a look I had never seen on him before. Not confusion, not embarrassment, but the kind of stillness that comes right before a door shuts. How many statements? Kelsey. And how many payments are we talking about? Kelsey didn't look at him right away, which was answer enough before she even opened her mouth. Wyatt kept staring at Kelsey like he could force the missing numbers into a shape that made sense. Then asked, how many payments bounced? And what else did you hide? Kelsey fired back before anyone could breathe. Don't stand there acting blindsided when you never looked at a statement unless somebody else put it in front of you. Paula turned on me instead. Voice sharp now. This is exactly what you wanted. Dana, to humiliate your own family over dinner. Then Wyatt's phone lit up beside his plate, bright enough for me to catch the preview before he reached it. 4 words that changed the room again. Mia, same room this Friday? I looked straight at him and gave him nowhere soft to land. You want honesty tonight. Wyatt. Then start with Mia. Kelsey snatched the phone, read the screen, and her face hardened into something colder than hurt. So that hotel charge from last month wasn't work either. Wyatt tried to grab the story back with, it's not what you think. But the sentence died. The second, Kelsey laughed without humor and pushed his phone away. That's funny, because men only say that when it's exactly what I think. Paula's perfect Easter dinner was gone by then, because her successful daughter was drowning in hidden debt. Her decent son-in-law had another woman texting him during ham. And nobody at that table could blame me for the timing. Paula looked at me like she needed one last insult to survive the room and snapped. What exactly do you have? Dana. Besides spreadsheets and attitude? Before I could answer, Irene set her glass down and cut straight across the table. I sat beside Dana at closing last week, watched her sign every page herself, and watched the keys land in her hand without a mortgage. Nobody spoke after that. Not Paula. Not Kelsey. Not even Wyatt. Because Irene never opened her mouth unless she came carrying proof. I looked at my mother, then at my sister, and let the silence hold long enough to make the point stand up on its own. I'm already settled. I told them. I just didn't invite anyone who mistakes using me for knowing me, and that's what bothered you tonight. Within 2 days, Wyatt had pulled the credit reports. Kelsey's hidden balances were real. The missed mortgage drafts were real. And Mia was no longer a name he could explain away. They didn't split that week, but the marriage everyone admired lost its polished surface. And once that happened, nobody treated Paula's old story like fact again. Paula called me 14 days later with a strained apology that bent almost immediately toward a heating bill, then paused where the ask usually lived. I told her, I'm not doing that anymore. I've sent the Ohio Energy Assistance information instead. and ended the call before guilt could sound like family again. By spring, I was standing on my small condo balcony with morning coffee, a quieter address, and a life that no longer needed permission to feel real. Inside, I renamed the spreadsheet from family to closed, while Irene set a rosemary plant on my counter and smiled. This looks right on you. I didn't win by destroying anyone. I just stopped disappearing from my own life at last.